Hello, I am George Mendoza, Superintendent of the Grande School District. I am pleased to bring to you our Work in Action segments, which highlight construction, academic programs, and learning opportunities for students in our school district. The LeGrand School Board and I welcome you to this week's segment. Hey LeGrand, this is George Mendoza, Superintendent of LeGrand School District, and with me today is Mrs. Smith, Dr. Koenig, and Professor Jess Hagedorn from Eastern Oregon University. We're going to talk today a little bit about our reading program that we have at Greenwood. We also have a similar program in Island City at Central based on tutoring and using some of the science of reading in our work. So my first question is to Dr. Koenig. What does reading look like at Greenwood?
Well, at Greenwood, we have a tiered approach of reading instruction. So tier 1 is happening in the classroom during language arts core time. And then from there, we are monitoring students, we're assessing their progress, identifying areas of strengths and weaknesses, and then moving into what we call as tier 2 support with classroom teachers, and then our specialists and special education of looking at the specific skills that students need. And then from there, our tier 3 is looking at where we might we're not making progress, if we need to identify students for special education, and then providing that specially designed instruction. So really meeting the needs of all learners through a tiered approach, and lots of wonderful staff on our team to make that happen.
All right, so Mrs. Smith, in terms of tiered support, what does it look like from your perspective?
So we have an intervention block, and the last couple of years we've learned to split it into two 20-minute chunks so that students are continuing to get tier 2 extra help from their classroom teacher, but then in addition to that, if they're still having trouble, they'll get service from me or the special education teacher, Nick Garcia. And we focus on specific skill needs. So if there's a kid who has a gap in phonemic awareness, sound by sound, we teach that. If they're struggling with phonics, we fill that gap. If it's oral reading fluency, we fill that gap. So just depending on what their need is, that's where they're placed, and we progress monitor along the way.
How long are these intervals of work and then monitoring and then changing anything or adding anything?
The progress monitoring, I progress monitor the students that I see, so that tier 3 every other Wednesday. So, and based on that, they could move out, like if they've surpassed the need of that specific skill. But a real big chunk shift happens when you're doing the diagnostics. So in the winter, like right now, you get a lot more data back, and overall 5 areas of reading.
So Jess, number one, thank you for all that you do to partner with our school district.
Sure.
And what do the reading tutors do here at Greenwood?
Yeah, so we're fully grant funded. Dr. Rhonda Fritz was the founder of Eastern Oregon Reading Clinic, and she's provided a ton of professional development, most of which the Grande School District teachers have gone through. But over the course of the last 2 years, we received some additional grant funding, and we've been able to expand that program to provide direct services to students. So we are hiring and training Eastern students who work as reading tutors in buildings. We work at all 3 elementary schools, but Greenwood is our primary site. And then the tutors just lean into the current school system that's already in place to provide direct one-on-one instruction. So as an example, this fall at Greenwood, we had 8 tutors, I want to say, and delivered around 575 one-on-one student sessions. Kiddos averaged around 22 one-on-one times with their tutor. The nice thing about that is that it reduces the group size in some of your other areas. So kiddos will see Kinsey for their 20-minute block, and then they'll work with the tutor for an additional 20-minute block, or with their classroom teacher. And we see really great gains, both measurable as far as improvement in decoding and word recognition, and then also things you can't really put a number on. The relationships the kids build with the tutors are pretty incredible, both for the tutor themselves and the student.
In general, can you describe the typical growth that you're seeing?
I'll talk a little bit as a new principal and having the opportunity to see the data from last year and coming in and kind of seeing where we were at. And there was a 1.5 years worth of growth for majority of students at Greenwood that occurred last year, which is exceptional. So students are doing a year and a half, which would be expected of just a year's growth, would be the average growth. So the impact that is occurring between the partnership with EOU, the emphasis on science of reading and strategies to really dive in and meet the individual needs of students is having a pretty profound impact. And the data that's coming out in our winter diagnostic right now is showing a trend in the same way.
I mean, the reasons are because they're getting what they need. It's just a different approach than we have done in the past. And the first year I used the curriculum, there were parts of it that I'm like, no way, we're not going to be able to get to this. And then the next year they got a little bit farther, and then this year I'm like, oh, they can do this all by themselves. Like, I had one student come in, and you post words and they are supposed to say each sound and blend it together, and posted a word and she just said map, and I was like, what, how'd you know that so fast? And she said because that's the first word I ever read.
It was really brave to shift to a 40-minute intervention block. Not only does it double the number of kids per grade that work with your most experienced reading teachers, it also increases the number of intervention minutes by 10 minutes a day or 40 minutes a week.
What is the science of reading?
I think the thing I would want parents to know about science of reading is the fact that reading doesn't just happen naturally for kids. So early on in my teaching career, and I don't know if you guys were the same, I had this false assumption that if a kid wanted to learn to read and you read with them, that they would be able to learn to read. And we just know that's not true. That's not how our brains work. Kiddos need direct, explicit instruction in all the skills.
We actually do a family reading program where we bring the parents in, and I train them on the specific skill that their kid is working on, and then we trade out books and materials, and they actually get to do what they're doing at school and support it at home.
Well, I think anytime literacy is happening at home is always a good thing. And I think highlighting where literacy happens in our life is also really important for kids. It might be we still get magazines, or it's reading recipes or whatever. It makes it where the reading is authentic.
The other thing we take for granted is just oral language in general, right? Reading any print is translating the print into spoken language. So talking with your kids is super important. It's just exposing them to more vocabulary and language and thinking processes in general, which all are related to